Palacio Marin from Electrical Activated to C, and our topic is about reform and revolution to American period. So the first is Filipino struggle during American period. So before our own American Revolution, the Filipinos revolted against their Spanish master a half dozen times, with countless smaller uprising in between. So why Filipino struggle during American period? So due to violence, Philippines-American War, which resulted in significant casualties from combat, disease, and famine. Other major struggle, including economic dependency on the United States, the imposition of colonial mentality that undermined local culture and confidence, and the ongoing challenge of building a new independent nation while under American oversight. The Philippine-American War is brutal conflict. After the U.S. took control to the Philippines from Spain, Filipino resistance led to brutal war. The conflict resulted in the deaths of an estimated 20,000 Filipino combatants and over 200,000 Filipino civilians, primarily due to violence, hunger, and disease. So, unequal fights. The Filipino force faced significant disadvantage, including shortage of weapons and ammunition and lack of international support. And other is political and economic struggle. Economic dependency, the Philippines became economically dependent on the United States, which harmed the development of a self-sufficient um, national economy and lack of full control. Despite promises of independence, the U.S. government retained significant oversight through a high commissioners, which limited the new Commonwealth government's autonomy over foreign affairs and currency. And other is social and cultural impact. With cultural change, traditional Filipino practices were sometimes replaced by American costumes, and the English language became dominant in many sector of society. So, so in the Philippine history, many heroes have emerged but none stood out like Dr. Rosa Rizal, who embodied the people's pride and longing for freedom. As one of the few Filipinos educated abroad, he used his knowledge to fight against Spanish oppression and improve his country's situation. His famous works, known as No Limitang Re and El Filibusterismo, hold great social and political importance and, and regarded among the world's literacy classics. Um, Rizal, together with other Filipino intellectuals known as the Ilustrados in Europe during the 1880s, advocating for reforms in the Philippines. So the next is the propaganda movement. The propaganda movement, which lasted roughly from 1880 to 1886, with the highest activity between 1880 and 1895, was a period when local Filipinos called for changes. Was a result, author of No Limitang and El Filibusterismo, Graciano Lopez Zaina, publisher of La Solidaridad. The movement main organ, Mariano Pons, the secretary, and Marcelo H. Del Pilar were among the prominent member. So the propaganda movement was a peaceful campaign for political and social reforms in the Philippines during the late 19th century. Mainly from 1880 to 1885, it was led by educated Filipinos known as the Ilustrados, many whom lived and studied in Europe. These reformists believed that the best way to improve the Philippines was through education, enlightenment, and peaceful advocacy rather than armed revolution. So the main goal of the movement was the Philippine province of Spanish, giving Filipinos the same rights as Spaniards. They are demanded representation in the Spanish Cortes or Parliament, freedom of speech and press equal treatment under the law, and the secularization of the clergy or its returning parishes to Filipino priests. Their ideas were spread through writings, essays, speeches, and publications, most notably the newspaper La Solidaridad, which served as the voice of the movement. Prominent leaders included Jose Rizal, who awakened national consciousness through his novels known as No Limit Tangre and El Filibusterismo, and Graciano Lopez, the founder of La Solidaridad, and Marcelo H. de Pilar, who later became its editor. Although the propaganda movement did not achieve its immediate political goals, it played a crucial role in inspiring Filipino nationalism. If united, if united, the educated class opened eyes of Filipino who injustice and laid the foundation for the Philippine Revolution of 1886. So the next is the Katipunan, the secret organization that initiated the revolutionary. So after Rizal arrested, exiled to the Pitan of La Liga Pilipina collapse, this was subsequently replaced by a call for dramatic change with Bonifacio suggested and backed. So, the Katipunan, short for Katas-Taasan, kagalang-galang ng Katipunan ng mga anak ng bayan, meaning the highest and most venerated association of the sons and daughters of the land, was a secret revolutionary society founded on July 7, 1892 by Andres Bonifacio, Teodoro Plata, Valentin Diaz, and other Filipino patriots. So the purpose of the Katipunan was to gain independence of the Philippines from Spanish colonial rule through revolution. It sought to end the abuses of the Spaniards and establish free and fair Filipino nation.
Good day everyone, I'm LG Bachelor and I'll be sharing about one of the most important parts of our Philippine history, from the arrivals of the Americans, the declaration of our independence, and up to the Japanese occupation and our liberation. So first let's discuss the arrival of Americans and the Declaration of Independence. The second phase of the American Revolution began in April 1898. After the revolution against Spain weakened, the Filipinos found new hope when the United States entered the war against Spain. Under General Emilio Aguinaldo, Filipinos prepared to continue their fight for independence, this time believing that the Americans would help them defeat Spain. Then, on May 1, 1898, the Battle of Manila Bay took place. The U.S. Navy, led by Commodore George Dewey, destroyed the Spanish fleet in just a few hours. This victory allowed the Americans to take control of the Manila, the Philippine capital. For the Filipinos, it seems like a great victory. They thought the Americans came as allies who supported their freedom. After hearing about the U.S. victory, Emilio Aguinaldo returned from exile in Hong Kong and formed an alliance with the Americans. Together, they fought against the remaining Spanish forces, but later on, Aguinaldo realized that the Americans had a different goal. They didn't come to give independence, but to take over the Philippines themselves. So, after that, no, despite the uncertainty, Emilio Aguinaldo declared Philippine independence on June 12, 1898, at his home in Kawit, Cavite. The Philippine flag was raised for the first time, and Lupang Hinurang, composed by Julian Felipe, was played by the San Francisco de Malabon Band. This event symbolized the Filipinos' courage and hope for freedom after more than 300 years of Spanish rule. Unfortunately, that freedom didn't last long. In December 1898, Spain and the United States signed the Treaty of Paris, officially ending the Spanish-American War. In that treaty, Spain ceded the Philippines to the United States for $20 million. Filipinos were not consulted, and this angered them greatly. This betrayal later led to the Philippine-American War in 1899, as Filipinos continued to fight for real independence. After taking control, the United States introduced a policy called benevolent assimilation. It aimed to Americanize Filipinos by introducing public education, English as the language of instruction, and new forms of government. They built schools, roads, and hospitals. Although it brought progress in some areas, the policy also tried to make Filipinos accept being under American rule instead of being free. So, even under American control, Filipinos continued to hope for independence. Over the next few decades, more changes happened, leading to the Commonwealth period, the Japanese invasion, and finally our freedom. So next, we will discuss the Philippines from 1898 to 1946. In 1935, the United States allowed the Philippines to have its own government called the Commonwealth. Manuel L. Quezon became the first president and Sergio Osmeña became the vice president. The Commonwealth aimed to prepare the Philippines for full independence within 10 years. It was a step closer to becoming a self-governing nation. In December 1941, during World War II, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii and soon invaded the Philippines. They bombed Clark Air Base and Manila, leading to the start of the Japanese occupation. From 1942 to 1945, Japan controlled the Philippines. The Japanese established the so-called Second Philippine Republic with Jose Pilarel as president. It was a difficult and painful time. Food became scarce, thousands of Filipinos were imprisoned, and many were killed. But still, Filipinos didn't give up. They formed guerrilla groups that secretly fought against Japanese soldiers. In February 1945, General Douglas MacArthur returned to the Philippines, keeping his promise, "I shall return." Together with the Filipino soldiers, they fought to liberate the country from Japanese control. The battle for Manila was one of the most destructive, but ended with the Philippines finally being free from Japan. After the war, the United States fulfilled its promise to grant independence. On July 4, 1946, the Philippines became a free and independent nation, and Manuel Rojas was inaugurated as the first president of the Third Republic of the Philippines. This officially ended almost 400 years of foreign rules. So, before full independence, the Japanese occupation had greatly affected the country. Let's look deeper into that period and how Filipinos survived and fought back. So, next, we will discuss the Japanese occupation of the Philippines. When the Japan first invaded, General Douglas MacArthur and the American Filipino forces were forced to retreat to Bataan and Corregidor because of Japan's military power. Despite their bravery, they were eventually captured and leading to the tragic Bataan Death March, where thousands of soldiers were died. President Manuel L. Quezon and the Commonwealth government moved to Corregidor Island and later to Washington, D.C. in the United States. From there, they continued to represent the Philippines and planned for the country's liberation. To avoid further destruction, Manila was declared an open city, meaning it would not be defended so that the Japanese would not destroy it. However, the Japanese still took over Manila in January 1942, causing great suffering among the Filipino. Even during the occupation, many Filipinos refused to surrender. They formed guerrilla movements, like what I said earlier, in the mountains and provinces to fight the Japanese secretly. These brave Filipinos helped gather information and supported the American forces in preparation for liberation. To keep the peace and protect civilians, President Quezon encouraged Dr. Jose P. Laurel to cooperate with the Japanese civilian administration. Laurel became the president of the Second Republic, though many Filipinos saw this as acting under Japanese control. On October 20, 1944, General MacArthur and President Sergio Osmeña landed in Leyte, marking the start of the liberation of the Philippines. Intense battle followed until the Japanese were finally defeated in 1945. This victory restored the Commonwealth government and prepared the way for our independence. To summarize, from the arrival of the Americans in 1898 to the liberation in 1945, and finally to our independence in 1946, the Filipino people went through years of wars, sufferings, and sacrifice. But through it all, we remain strong and united. Our ancestors' bravery and determination give us the freedom we now enjoy as Filipinos. So that's all. Thanks for listening.
Today, everyone, I'll be sharing the internal struggles and revolt that happened in the Philippine Revolution. So, my topic is a series of bloody revolts. So, following the Katipunan discovery, Spanish authorities made many arrests in order to identify its member. Bonifacio and his comrades were plotting a national uprising. So, this resulted in the cry of Pugadlawin, in which revolutionary tore cedulas. So, community tax certificate invoked symbolized their battle against Spain. So, the Katipunan, led by Andres Bonifacio, started planning a revolution after their secret organization and was discovered by the Spanish authorities. So, this led to the famous cry of Pugadlawin, where revolutionaries tore their cedula or tax certificate as a symbol of breaking away from Spain. So, Cavite insurgent eventually stated triumph after a series of failed revolts. So, the Philippine Revolution was in full swing under Emilio Aguinaldo. And Mayor of Cavite, L.V. Hepon Mariano Alvarez Bonifacio uncle. Rizal's name was pulled down by the revolt. He was suspected of being a member of Cobent militant group. Result was sentenced to death by a firing squad after being charged with sedition, conspiracy, and insurrection. So Rizal's name was tarnished by the revolt. He was charged with being a member of a covert militant organization. Rizal was sentenced to death by firing squad on charges of sedition, conspiracy, and the revolution gained momentum in Cavite, where Emilio Aguinaldo and Manigno Alvarez led a successful revolt. However, Dr. Rizal became associated with the rebellion, and he was falsely accused of being part of a militant group, and he was executed by firing squad in 1896, accused of sedition, conspiracy, and insurrection. So our next topic is about internal struggles, conflicts, and a surprising turn of events. Katipunan soon began fighting amongst themselves. Alongside the Spanish authorities, rivalries arose between commanders and areas, causing major schism and within the organization. The Katipunan was split into two councils, the Magdiwang and Magdalo, which were supporters of Aguinaldo and supporters of Bonifacio. So, as the revolution progressed, disagreements cross among the revolutionaries, and they have two main factors formed. So these are the meaning of Magdiwa is loyal to Bonifacio, and the Magdalo loyal to Aguinaldo. To resolve the conflict, they held the Tejeros Convention in 1897. So during this meeting, arranged election was held where Aguinaldo became a president and Bonifacio was appointed director of the Interior, but his qualifications were questioned. So, soon after, Bonifacio formed a separate government in Nanaik, Cavite, which led Aguinaldo to order his arrest. So, Bonifacio and his brother, Procopio, were captured, tried to treason, and executed near Maragadon. After Bonifacio's death, Aguinaldo established the Republic of Biak na Bato and drafted the country's first constitution. He negotiated with the Spanish government for peace and exchange for its surrender of arms, amnesty, and a payment of 400,000 to the revolutionaries. However, while Spain kept some of its promises, revolutionary activity continued, paving the way for future uprising that led to Philippine independence. So, these internal conflicts may have weakened the revolution, but they also show the Filipinos' determination to fight for independence.